Well, good day and welcome to the Kick on this Thursday. We're going to be into a really interesting topic very shortly. I don't know if you've ever had a website and know that there's got to be some information somewhere that tells you what's going on, who's visiting, where are they coming from, and maybe you're wanting to try and get an insight into how many visitors are coming to your website. 15 years ago, you had a little counter at the bottom of your website, and you got so proud of that little ticker was just going over and over again, showing the hundreds of people that are on your website. And then we started to use a thing called Google Analytics. And if you were brave enough to log in and have a look at it, you could see all the amazing things that were happening. Yes, I've got these people from Russia, these people from Venezuela, these people from even New Zealand looking at my website. And of course, you want to kind of look at that data and then say, but are they customers? Which is more important that if you're a plumber in the western suburbs of Brisbane, you really want to find out where the traffic's coming from around Queensland. And Google Analytics was able to tell you that. But there's some news that we need to talk about. So we're going to bring in our technical lead for XI Media, Andrew Marks. Andrew, thanks for joining us on the Kick. Going to get your expertise on this whole topic of what's been happening with Google Analytics and the acronym GA4. It sounds like another Tom Cruise movie around the corner. Can you tell us what is actually happening with Google Analytics?
What is happening? Well, it's all happening at Google Analytics. We are used to using Google Analytics. We've used it for a very long time. And the exciting news is there is a new version of Google Analytics coming out. Well, it's out. What is happening is the analytics that we know and love will come to an end July 1st next year. Then after that, we'll be solely relying on the new version of Google Analytics. So you may remember maybe 5 years ago, analytics went through a bit of an upgrade to become universal analytics. When it's funny, you were talking about the hit counters. Like if you're old enough to remember, you could refresh your page and the hit counter goes up by one. It was all very exciting. That's when analytics was created. It was a much simpler time where we didn't have browsers on our phone, let alone apps. The fridge wasn't connected to the internet. It was just a time where realistically all you could really track was how many people went to a page, or maybe they went from this page to this page to this page, and that's about it. So 5 years ago, analytics went through an upgrade called to Universal Analytics, where we had to essentially just upgrade a little bit of code that was used to track information on the website, and that was it. You then got access to the new reports, the better information. This new tool has been built from the ground up, so there's a fair bit more to it. It's built for this time online, where, as I said, the fridge is connected to the internet, but also where having to contend with things like data privacy laws, and people who don't want to be tracked can just add an extension to their browser to prevent ads and tracking and that sort of thing. So this tool has been built, as I say, pretty much from the ground up. The only thing it has in common with the older version of Google Analytics is that Google created it and it's called Analytics. Otherwise, it is completely different.
Apparently, there are lots of other tools out in the market, but you're right. Google Analytics is pretty much the standard. And it's funny. I kind of look at GA4. I mentioned it being a Tom Cruise movie, but it's like you get Fast and the Furious, and we're now up to version 10. What is GA4 going to actually offer us? Is it an improvement? Is it a drastic change?
Look, it's an improvement, but it's also a learning curve. When you first look at it, you'll be wondering where all the bells and whistles that came with analytics, where have they gone? The good news is you are not losing any functionality. So whatever you could do with Universal Analytics, you now can do with Google Analytics 4. There's just that little bit more in the way of tracking setup. So more to set up. It's a bit more complicated to get started, but the benefit is, as I said, it's built for this age, this time, and so essentially, with the I guess the data privacy laws and the don't track me extensions. This new tool is being built with AI and machine learning in the background. So it tracks what it can track, but then it uses some really intelligent behind the scenes, some smarts behind the scenes to glean information about what's happening on your website. So the best way the analogy that I use is it's like a survey. When you send a survey out to the market, your entire market doesn't fill out that survey, but you get enough of your customers, enough people filling it out that you can start to see trends. And so that's what essentially is going to happen. As we know, in Europe, they implemented the GDPR laws. California now has privacy laws as well. And these laws are essentially saying when someone arrives on your website, you need to ask them if they're happy to be tracked. And if they don't tick that box, they don't get tracked. But the problem with Universal Analytics is it fires when they land on that page. So how do you then go to Google and say, no, don't track this? They've already been tracked. So lots of bells and whistles being built into it, a lot more to it. But the other thing, again, there are more, it's looking for more information. So Universal Analytics was created pretty much just to track a page hit. You could then sculpt it into saying, well, this is what a conversion looks like. Someone who fills out this form and arrives on this page, that's a conversion. Whereas Google Analytics 4, everything that happens on a site is an event. And then you can convert them into a converting event. So, if you want someone, if a conversion for you is someone who's read, scroll down 90% of the page, or if they've watched a YouTube video, or if they've clicked on an external link, all of that could be tracked previously with Universal Analytics. It just took a little bit of know-how to get it set up. It's a lot easier to track these conversion events with Google Analytics 4.
So if you didn't know what the analytics has been doing for you, you might have thought of it as just somebody who's like the guy at the door clicking on how many people are actually coming into your website. But there was so much more. It was telling us how long they were there, what pages they visited, which page they arrived on, which page they left. So that as a business owner, you could actually start to see how effective your website was. Now, one of the things I need to ask, Andy, just in terms of the new GA4, are there any new features that are exciting when you look at what GA4 offers?
Look, there is a lot to be excited about. Where we're a bit scared is that it takes a lot to set up some of this stuff up. But one of the really exciting things, Universal Analytics was notoriously bad at determining how long someone stayed on your website. It didn't track the time that a visitor arrived. So these days, if you run a blog or if you have a social media account, you might post pages to social media. Someone on social media might, even a news organization will post an article. Someone will click on that, they'll have a read through it. They may spend a few minutes absorbing it, and then they'll hit the back button and keep scrolling through their social media. In Universal Analytics, in the old analytics, that counts as a bounce. That means someone arrived on your website, stayed on the one page, and then left. And the bounce rate was something that, as a marketer, we always try to improve. We've spent this time, or we've used our resources to get an eyeball on our website. Now, how do we keep them? How do we move them over to our services page to view our paid services? That's not always everyone's business model. The business model may be to just consume the information on that page. So what Analytics 4 does is you can tell it if someone spends 10 seconds on my page, which 10 seconds is its default value. It does this out of the box. If someone spends 10 seconds on any of your pages, they convert from an unengaged visitor to an engaged visitor. So all of a sudden, that bounce rate is less important because it was never accurate in the first place. But if someone spends 1 minute or 60 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever you deem enough for them to be engaged, now you can tell, hey, my content is good enough to be engaging these visitors. Now, for whatever reason, they didn't continue into the website, but they didn't bounce because they consumed the content that I made available.
Yeah, and a lot of bloggers will be happy to hear that. And it's amazing when you count to 10, it's actually quite a long time. Andy, we understand 23rd of July, 2023. Plenty of time. Do we have to worry? What should we be doing now?
What we want to do now, if you've ever delved into your analytics reports, one of the most eye-opening reports you can have is year on year. So, how did we go this month compared to this month last year? Sometimes you can't compare month to month because, for example, December, when everyone's going on holidays, your traffic typically dies right off unless you're selling Christmas trees. The month to month, there will be seasonal trends when it comes to your reporting. So one of the best ways to see, is my traffic improving? Has my SEO campaign been working? Or, is my social media presence helping with my traffic? One of the best things you can do is look at the same month previously. So ideally, what will have, what everyone will have happen is they will have their Google Analytics 4 tags set up, today being the last day of the month, but as soon as they can into July, so that when we get to July next year, or even August next year, September next year, we've got month-to-month reporting for that. So step one is absolutely to get that GA4 tag installed as quick as possible, and then where the next step, and this is something we're working through with our clients now, is we have set up in Universal Analytics what most people would consider a conversion. So if someone fills out a form, if they've got an e-commerce website, if someone makes a purchase, that's a conversion. So then we can say, well, look, how did my pay-per-click campaign compare to my social media campaign when it comes to sales? That sort of thing. The same conversions need to be set up in Google Analytics 4, but what can also happen is we can take this opportunity to sit down and look at what your business is and say, well, you're not selling anything. You have a contact form, but that's just someone asking questions. But what is a conversion to you? What do you want to track with the visitors on your website? Because there are some extraordinary tools to figure out, are we now converting the traffic that we get? Because a conversion to your business might not be the same as a conversion to another business.
Andy, you would have been quite busy over the last little while. Excite Media has many clients that would have had the old Universal Analytics installed. What have we been doing behind the scenes to get everything up to date for the Excite Media team and their clients?
The Google Analytics 4 tag has been available for more than a year. So anytime we've brought on a new customer, we've, just as part of the course, been setting up that tag and installing it to, as I say, to get that year-on-year data, just at the very least, the basics of tracking set up. So whenever we've brought on a new marketing customer, anytime we've needed to create a new tag for a brand new website, for example, that GA4 tag has been set up as part of our setup process. But what we've also been doing the last few months is going through who are our active marketing customers and ensuring that those tags are set up. Once we completed that work, now we're working on looking at the customers on a per customer basis and working out, what conversion events do we need to track for this customer, because now in this new world, there are so many things we can be tracking. Each business is completely different. So that's the exciting part. We now have more tools available in order to track useful information from that Google Analytics report. In the past, you would set up your few conversion events, but then you'd have to, dig deeper into the reports to glean certain information. So what we can now do is set up specific conversion events. But the other cool thing that I have noticed as you poke around, we don't always check reports inside of Google Analytics. We have a few extra tools for that sort of thing. But with the machine learning, it does like to point out, hey, look, here's something that might be statistically significant. This particular post, or maybe people who search for this particular word behave slightly different. So using that machine learning, Google Analytics 4 is providing some insights that you may have missed previously.
Brilliant. Now, if you're interested in finding out more about Google Analytics, you can contact the Excite Media team. We'll talk about that and also go to our website, excitemedia.com.au. Feel free to check in with the team. You can fill in the contact form. If you go to our contact form, there is actually a support area that you can click on as well if you'd like to know more about how we're handling your particular website. Check that out. Now, Andy, we were just having a chat about what Google provides, and they've got a lot of information on their website. What we'll do is we'll put in some links after this. This was the blog that came out in March this year that was kind of highlighting some of the preparation that you can do for Google Analytics, moving from the UA, Universal Analytics, to GA4. And we'll also put in a link to this particular page here, which is kind of like a step-by-step switch. Now, Excite Media is doing all the work for you, but if you want to kind of find your own way, there's a lot of great resources on Google's website. So we'll come back to that. You mentioned just a moment ago, Andy, that we can actually take a lot of that data, which can be a little bit overwhelming when you look at any of the analytics that Google provides. And actually, we utilize an agency reporting tool. So this is a great way of giving dashboards. What do we actually do to get the Google Analytics information into a tool like this?
Yeah, look, if you're used to Google Analytics, if take active steps to get into Google Analytics and have a poke around, the reporting at Universal Analytics is great. There are heaps of different reports that you can drill right down and get some granular information from. If you then start looking for that same information at Google Analytics you're going to be very disappointed because those reports really don't exist yet. My guess is that Google they've been putting in a lot of time to get the machine learning, the real clever, intelligent smarts behind the scenes working for this new tracking tag. But my guess is now that we're all facing mass adoption with Universal Analytics being put to the sword, I guess, they will spend more time making those reports a bit more accessible. But we don't actually report from the Universal Analytics dashboard. What we do is we import all the raw data into a separate tool and then create visualizations for you. So, with our wealth of experience in the marketing space, we know what reports are useful when making strategic decisions around your business. So we can set up various reports, again, on a per business basis to say, well, look, you got this many hits to your website, this many visitors, but let's break it down into, how many came from social, how many came from a pay-per-click campaign, how many were organic traffic over pay-per-click, that sort of thing, and then drilling again right down to the goals of your business. If you are running a paid campaign, you want to know that you're getting a positive return on investment. You don't want to be throwing that money down the toilet and saying, I spent $1,000 but I only made $200 worth of sales. If that were the case, we would obviously need to work on that campaign to turn it into a positive return on investment. So the tool that we use makes the data available in Google Analytics more accessible, more digestible, so that when you talk to your account manager at the end of the month, you can easily go through the useful information. And if anything stands out, we can then do a deep dive into the actual reports to get that extra information. But just all of our marketing customers, whether it be SEO or Facebook or pay-per-click, Google, LinkedIn, that sort of thing, we have these reports set up to collect the information. The account manager has a look over it, and then as they send it out, they can give you a call and walk you through it.
That's brilliant. And I understand that sometimes the data can get a little bit muddy, shall we say, when there are all these bots around the world, basically programs that are running around the internet, visiting websites for marketing purposes. They can skew your data, but we actually strip all that away, I understand.
We do. So again, when we set up Universal Analytics, we don't just install the tracking code and give you the report. We do a whole bunch of different things to make sure that the data you get when you get your reports is as clean and perfect as possible. So one of those things is strip out all the tracking data. So, you may not be aware, but obviously Google sends its crawler out to find new content. And that, because that's a Google service, that usually doesn't trigger an event in in Google Analytics, but you know, every other search engine has its own crawler. A lot of analytics stuff has their own crawlers. Like we use a tool called Ahrefs, or there's a bunch of SEO plugins that also go out and collect information from the internet. And then there's the dark side of the internet, where there's the hackers that are constantly looking for vulnerabilities. So people who have a WordPress website, as you know, there are often plugin updates. Some of those plugin updates are just new features, but some of those plugin updates are to fix a vulnerability that's been discovered. So you know, there are constantly crawlers out there looking for these vulnerabilities to then, you know, hack your website for all intents and purposes. So what we do when we set up Google Analytics is, you know, we have rules to strip out the bots. We also set up rules to strip out, you know, the IP address of our office, of the client's office, even our home internet, because a lot of Excite Media work from home. So we keep the list of IP addresses of our home internet connections up to date, so that when the customer or the staff at Excite Media are actually working on a client website, that doesn't get tracked as a visitor to the website. So we do an extraordinary amount to try and keep that data as clean as possible. And we're now working on the same sort of set of rules to implement for Google Analytics 4. But my inkling is that it's actually smart enough to know that, you know, hey, this person has logged into the WordPress website. They're likely, you know, an administrator. They're behaving in a different way than what a typical client would be. So let's isolate that information.
Love it. This has been absolutely insightful. Thank you very much for giving us some more information, what's happening with Google Analytics 4 in the different social media posts. We will put those links that we provided earlier so that you can have a look for yourself, but do reach out to the Excite Media team. Hey, Andy, we'll get you back on the show before they bring out Google Analytics 5.
Perfect.
So we'll be back next week with another edition of The Kick. Keep in mind that we're talking to some of our clients to bring them on some great stories to tell you. It was good to catch up with the Quotech team last week, and we'll see you next Thursday at 11.